station.
Nancia, Smokehouse, it's the urban heat. Shout out to Coach Live.
Coach LA's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 La. Coach La 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 La. If you got something on your mind, you can call in, you can hit a line. She the realest, ooh, she the realest. You can tap in, lava, always get a business to empower you so that you can do every and anything that you want to. Kicking it with Coach LA, it's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 La. Coach La 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 La.
What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of Conversations with La La La. How y'all doing? Happy Sunday to you. As y'all know, I'm always super excited to be in the studio, to be here in my favorite town of Boston, Massachusetts. And it's season 7. Can y'all believe that? Coach La has been doing Conversations with Coach La for going on 2 years, and it is season 7, episode 115. Can you believe that? 115. I'm still shocked that that this isn't going on this long. Initially, I said, you know what, I'm gonna do it 30 days. Then I said 90 days. Then I said 6 months. Then I said 50 episodes. But I really enjoy having these powerful conversations. And all you beautiful listeners, all around the globe, there's people in Kenya listening to this show, which really bugged me out when I realized I went international. So you are tuned into Conversations with Coach La. For all the new listeners, I am your favorite around the way therapist and your host, Coach. They call me Coach now. They just took the LA off. And we're broadcasting live from Urban Heat Studios right here in Hyde Park, Massachusetts. And we are the only Black-owned radio station on iHeartRadio. Yes, that is a big deal. And it makes me super proud and excited of how far we've come. So, you know that I told you last week that what I am doing is a series. And we're unpacking the past and healing from within. And we're addressing how personal, generational, and societal wounds shape us and how we can transform them by using them as stepping stones for growth. So tonight's conversation is about triumph and how we can take trauma and turn it into pain. And we're going to make that our superpower. And we have a beautiful guest tonight that's going to be joining me, who is all about that. And she uses expressive art therapy. Y'all know I love poet therapy. The background about poet therapy is that poetry is therapy, if you know anything about expressive writing. So we're going to dive into that. So Toni Rose is my guest tonight. Listen to me. Why do I always get tongue twisted? It must be my nerves. But Toni Rose is my guest tonight. She is a Boston-bred artist. She's a survivor. She's an author and a mental health clinician similar to myself. And she is the visionary behind Healing Through Art Therapy and the Blue Rose movement. So I am super excited to have her join me on Conversations with Coach La. I hope she's ready. She said she was a little nervous. I told her, don't worry. I got her, and we're going to have a good time. So I'm going to bring her on so y'all can see her beautiful face. How you doing, Miss Rose? You still anxious and nervous? Wait a minute. Why am I not hearing you? Wait a minute. I'm not hearing you on the microphone. Maybe hold on. Okay, say something.
Mic check.
Yes, talk a little louder.
Mic check.
Yeah, there we go. Now I can hear you. You got such a nice, soft, smooth, sultry voice. So you're going to have to make sure you talk right into that mic. So one more time, welcome to Conversations with Coach Law, Miss Toni Rose.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, now I got you. Loud and full effect there. So tell me, who is Miss Toni Rose?
Oh, she's a lot of things.
Uh-huh.
Mother, sister, daughter, lover, friend, poet, therapist, author, writer, you name it, I'm probably it.
Uh-huh. Now, I met you through your poetry. And you have used poetry as your own method of healing and your own way of expressing your trauma and turning it into your own superpower. How would you feel about doing a poem to set this thing off?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. How about we get it started with a poem? I need them to feel a little bit about it. Got the nice little background music going. I need them to experience a little bit of the Blue Rose movement.
So this is why I do this. My truth is not your truth. If my truth is not your truth, does that make it a lie? I do this for the kids I see nearly every day. Mental health diagnoses do not define who you are, but it betrays the way we act. DCF took you from your parents who beat and abused you. Mood disorder turned you into a petulant child. Your parents did not hold you accountable. Adoption, not understanding who you are. Why do you feel strange, different, uncontrolled inside? Cut, run, lie, steal. I wish I was dead. I wish you were dead. Adults, teachers, and mental health providers never dig behind the surface, stuck on what you've done, than trying to understand the why. I do this because it makes you think, forces you to feel, tap into your emotions. I am a survivor. He used our friendship, my fear of my father, childhood games to keep touching me inappropriately. I never thought about suicide, but I wished I was dead. I never acted on thoughts of being dead. I drank, I smoked, I flirted. I screwed them before they could screw me. You see, survivors respond to their abuse differently. Most keep it a secret. Some self-medicate or self-mutilate. Others abuse their bodies sexually, promiscuously. I do this for the children of the children who already suffer from trauma because there was no healing, no understanding, no support for their abused mother or father. I do this for the ignorance in your thinking while you silently suffer, remembering those things that happened to you. Sorry, I forgot the trigger warning, but there is no trigger warning when he touches you in places not meant to be touched. He keeps you isolated from your family, friends. He apologized for the black and blues, promising never to do it again. I do this because I believe there is healing through art. There is healing in speaking your truth. My truth is not your truth. If my truth is not your truth, does that make it a lie?
Let's give it up for Miss Toni Rose. Welcome to Conversations with Coach La. And we talk about hard things in very creative ways. And that's a little touch, a little taste, as they would say, of who you are through poetry. But you wear so many hats. You said that earlier. You're a clinician. You're a mom. You're a social advocate. You are a survivor. Now, you started this movement and you named it the Blue Rose, which holds deep meaning. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired that name?
So blue is my favorite color. And a partner of mine who thought he did something wrong bought me a dozen blue roses. So then I had to just really investigate what that meant. And it's just the unattained, the mystical, just that inner person that doesn't show themselves freely. And that's just what ended up being the definition of a blue rose that's trying to survive. And it took me a minute to realize the Blue Rose was me, because it was all about poetry when I started putting the showcase and the movements together.
Wow, I never knew how symbolic things can be, a partner who did something wrong, the idea of being a survivor, the roses representing you. I think that embodies so much about what expressive therapy is through the arts, and how you just used all of that to sort of cultivate something beautiful that's connected to often a lot of trauma. So you've decided to dedicate yourself to helping others heal. through expressive arts. Um, can you share a little bit about why you chose that tool and how that became part of your journey? Because I know you touched on it, but I need you to really break it down for the people who don't know, right? She being
Yes,
real
yes.
politically correct, right? When, it's all, it sounds all nice and beautiful, I'm the blue rose, but the reason why we're here is how do we take these traumatic experiences and turn that pain into power and into healing? So tell us about that.
Poetry saved my life. Writing and releasing from middle school into high school into adult life. So I just wrote. I wrote to release, to be able to process, understand what I was thinking, what I was feeling. And a coworker of mine took me to Lizard Lounge in Cambridge I think it was in 2011 the first time I went. And the love there and the support. And what I did was the first sexual abuse poem. And just the love that you got from it. And the more I started going back doing it, one person had came to me and was like, how do I help you pay it forward? Because I saved her life by having that strength and power to get on that mic and put the most vulnerable moments of my childhood and of my life out there.
Wow. So you have been doing poetry events for how long?
I started the Blue Rose Amazing Poetry Women Showcase in 2012.
Okay.
And we went everywhere and anywhere they would have us in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island.
And you also have written several books as well under the same umbrella.
So I have one book that's completed that I've been selling. It's Hyper Vigilante, and it's hyper-vigil-e for being a vigilante, where it's like when you have trauma and you go through PTSD, you're hyper vigilant all the time. You're scared. You're not sure what you can trust, if you can trust others, if you can trust yourself. So it just became that watcher of people. Being able to see what's in the shadows and knowing, is it safe or unsafe? And that's the biggest thing with therapy, is helping you process. Trauma may not go away because you can be triggered at any given time, but it helps you answer the question or ask the question for yourself, am I safe or not safe? And then using the coping skills you learned if you do feel safe, and if you don't, how to get that help.
So we are touching on right now, guys, the power of expressive art therapy. Both myself and Toni are mental health clinicians. So when did you get that aha moment, that connection that, okay, I'm actually doing therapy, or which one came first? Like, did you say, okay,
Poetry came first.
Poetry came first, and then you decided you wanted to use it to help people with their mental health? How did that happen?
So I have to give a shout out to one of my boss ladies over at the crisis team. So for me, I'm this believer that everything happens for a reason. So for my life, I had DCF come in, they give you that wraparound services. And then I asked, how could I be a part of that? So when they have a clinician, you'll get a family partner that comes in, or you'll get a therapeutic mentor that's working with them. And I was like, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I went to hire for a community family partner. And when I interviewed, she was like, nah, you're going to be better with the crisis team, because I can do stuff in the moment. So it's not where I have to really process. When crisis comes, I can respond. And then once everything's done, I break down and do my own healing. So for years, when my boss started working with me, and I would do these sessions with families and use poetry, music, whatever it was, she's like, girl, you're doing therapy in 15 minutes with these families. I need you to go back and get your master's and get paid for it. It took her 2 years to convince me.
What was the deciding factor that finally said, you know what, she's right, I'm going to do it?
So I researched it. I talked to a friend of mine's, Mr. Art Collins, and he told me,
Art.
Yes, he had told me that the master's program is very different than the undergrad program, in the master's program, you're doing what you love to do.
Can you say that again? And I told people this before. By the time you get to your master's degree, you should really be in alignment with what you really want to do. Like spending all of that money, time investment, and you're not sure about it. But most people who go get a master's have really kind of locked in. I mean, unless you go straight from undergrad, which I don't recommend that. But anyways, that's a whole other conversation. But usually most people have a lot of lived experience that decide to go get their master's, and they know this is what they want to do. That was my experience. By the time I decided to get a master's, I was very clear as to why I was getting it, what the purpose of it. I got way more than I expected. It was definitely a self-healing journey to go back to school and to learn, because I learned mostly about myself. And through learning myself, that has helped me be a very dynamic and effective clinician. So anyways, I hijacked her conversation, y'all.
That's okay.
So because he said, do what you love. Do what you love. Shout out to Art.
So he said, do what I love. So for me, going through the application process was, one, can I fit into what their definition of therapy meant? So I'm lived experience, not necessarily the book smart. So it was like, how can I bring me and poetry into it? And then it was, if I can't afford to pay out of pocket, then I'm not doing this, because I was not taking out any more loans. So it took me 2.5 years. There was times for the adult learning, man, they had classes where you could take just a 1-week course and get through it, or weekend courses, or you're taking the 8 weeks, 10-week sessions. So there was enough variation for me to do it.
Right. Now, where did you get your education from?
I went to Cambridge College.
Shout out to Cambridge College. I have an intern. What's up, Saida, from Cambridge College right now that's working on her getting her licensed mental health counseling degree. So Cambridge College is an awesome university for individuals that are wearing multiple hats, I would say, because of the variety and the flexibility that they provide to adult learners. So shout out to Cambridge College. So expressive art therapy, in your short abbreviated definition, how would you define it?
How about I share a poem that defines it?
I like that, y'all. So once again, we got Toni Rose, the author, the clinician, my poetic friend. She's just very phenomenal. She is going to give us another spoken word piece. So, Toni Rose.
Poetry mimics all genres of art. A tone of lyrical notes flows through the ear, captured attention, sweet melody. A dance so intense, drawn in partnership, using one to lead the other. Pulse beats like drums echoing the dance hall, mind encompass rhythm and beats, art knows no limits. Freestyle in the streets, mind, heart, and soul, emotions explode pure and raw. Poetry mimics all genres of art, spoken, instrumental, physical movements, interpretations of feelings, receiving a message not to be judged. Embraced and understood, the story is truth, life experiences. Your opinion does not change reality, but it just may change your bias. Dancers move to the beat, to the notes of someone else's song, capturing the essence of the message, adding a personal spin, poetry in motion, healing, and community sharing. Partners move forcefully across the stage, in sync moves, connect music. Master lyricist mimics all forms of art. Listen to the tone in the notes, see the moves along the dance floor, the strokes of a painting, the shadow behind the drawings. Poetry invites you to get to know a poet.
Invites you to get to know a poet. Now, I think when you say that, now you got to break down the poet, right? Because we use that term, but I didn't always call myself a poet.
So you can be a spoken word artist, a storyteller. So poetry came from journaling for me, and then condensing journaling to, I don't want to write these long, complete, proper sentences, to how do I just put it out there? So I'm a storyteller. I am absolutely a storyteller, but I'm a slam poet as well, because I've been doing it for so long that the competition just really gets under your skin sometimes. But it's still about me putting the message out there as opposed to the scores.
Right. So once again, you guys are tuned in to Conversations with Coach La. I am your host and your favorite around the way therapist, Coach La La La. You're tuned into the Urban Heat 98.1 FM. We are Boston's only Black owned radio station on iHeartRadio. And on this show, we talk about all things that and life some more, and how to overcome all that gets thrown our way. You know, one of the dualities of life is that no matter what you do, there's going to always be opposing concepts. There's going to be love, there's going to be hurt, there's going to be disappointment, there's going to be optimism. There's always going to be these things that we sort of talk about. And it comes out in poetry through the different metaphors and similes that we use. We talk about all the contradictions and dualities of this world. And I think that's the connection between creative expression and emotional healing, is that what we know is to heal from something, you have to admit that you've been hurt and name it.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I agree. So I feel like using poetry, music, journaling allows you to put it on paper, allows you to put it out there where you don't have to feel extra vulnerable just sitting there with a therapist asking you a whole bunch of questions that you have to answer. It makes it easier for you to create that conversation for them to feel more comfortable to answer.
I think so. I think one of the things I love about poetic spaces is I think it's one of the most non-judgmental spaces. And you'll hear all the time, hey, if you attack the poetry, not the poet. And if you really got a issue with it, write a poem and come back and recite your poem and
Yes.
do a rebuttal. But I feel like there's no emotion or no concept that's off limits. You can express yourself in any way, and any emotion is acceptable and embraced. I think that's what I've loved about it, is that it's very healing to just be able to get up there and people relate. That's what I felt like. It was the one space that I could be a therapist, I could be a survivor, I could be hurt, I could be in love, I could be upset. Whatever it was all accepted. So, tell me about healing through art therapies.
So healing through art therapies is me actually as a clinician. I did the Blue Rose, and one of the goals was healing through arts therapies. And it's how do I combine both talk therapy and art therapy? So I use poetry with many of my clients. It may not be right in the beginning, but especially when it comes to the trauma, I definitely use the poetry to help guide them. I'll use a movie or a song and say, how does this relate to you? And come back full circle. One of the big things that I'm trying to do with healing through art therapies is I feel groups are more powerful than the individual therapy sometimes. And sometimes having both, having that peer that can relate to you, that shows that you're not alone in what you're going through, and it generates more conversation. New guy that I've been dating, we've been talking about even first responders, because we have these amazing conversations. And when I break something down using the poetry or using a TV show, it's like, dang, it'd be nice if first responders could have this kind of a conversation to understand how to work with the community even better. Mm-hmm. And then you have Michael Warrior Bonds that's really quick to say, promote, get out there. You need to do this. So being a poet and a therapist, I can do it where we take your insurance and we bill and we go through there and everybody knows what's going on as far as that, or leave the insurance company out of it. I do not have to give you a mental health diagnosis, but understand as a poet, we're not doing therapy. We're doing art. Mm-hmm. We're writing, and we're going to talk about it like everyday people, but I'm not diagnosing you, but I will support you if you want to do therapy. So that's one of the goals for having both.
I think, I have had clients, because I'm always promoting poetry and journaling. And some people want prompts, right? They need prompts. They need sort of guided journals to just kind of spark them. And I feel like that's what your groups are doing is giving them insight and giving them prompts, different things to kind of trigger those emotions and process them. You mentioned something earlier about the power of groups. And I do think community, because community care, self-care, and just connection is really important. Sometimes we can't do everything in isolation. Although I think writing and creating groups gives you the best of both worlds, right? Because you have these moments where you have to be quiet and sort of reflect and write and do independent writing and then share. So you kind of get a chance to do a little bit of both. Do you use meditation as well in terms of helping people sort of center and get out of writer's block?
I do, and I have. Um, and I'm that therapist that if I'm gonna talk the talk, I'm gonna walk the walk.
Mm-hmm.
So I did my journey 6 months prior to my parents passing. I was on a journey of healing and using different forms of meditation just to heal internally, heal my wealth, my financial situation. So I'll take that and look at, okay, what are we going to play for my clients, whether I'm doing Zoom or we're in person? If it's anxiety, depression, how do we refocus and center them on that aspect? And sometimes it could be a song that they like that's going to get them there. So it's whatever gets you there. And when we talk art, cooking is art just as much as writing. So for those people that like to cook or you're into sports, we can make that a coping skill as well.
I love that. So I know in my practice, I'm always encouraging people to write customized self-care plans. And what Miss Toni Rose just gave you is that, self-care is not cookie cutter. I think sometimes things can become what they call pop psychology or pop culture therapy. And everybody's like, self-care, self-care. But what does that mean? How do you set boundaries? How do you do all these things? We say all of these things, but that doesn't mean that people really know what that means. My mantra, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is better on self. And a lot of times people think that that's me telling people not to have community or to be selfish. No, it's really about how well do you know thyself? Are you able to be comfortable in your own skin? And if not, what's holding you back, right? And so I love that you are combining both individual work and group work and giving people options. I think that's really important. So for those that need a very textbook definition, art therapy is a form of psychotherapy involving the encouragement of free self-expression through painting, drawing, modeling, or the using activities that aid in diagnosis. So pretty much journaling, meditation, all of these type of things allow you to get more comfortable with expressing what's going on with you somatically. And all that means is, what are you feeling? Where are you feeling it in your body? Sometimes we don't realize those headaches, those stomach cramps, those muscle aches are connected to what's going on in your thoughts and your mind. And sometimes if you work through those things, guess what? Lo and behold, you feel a lot better in your body. So tell me what helps inspire you now. So now that we've sort of moved away from a lot of the trauma and you're no longer in that space, what's keeping you going?
Life, everyday living. Oh man. I never stop writing. There's writer's blocks at times, but I never stop writing for the most part. And it can be just based on what's going on. So it's a little pieces of everything. Like one of the last pieces that I wrote recently was what it means to be a man. So I have a 30-year-old son. Ooh. And man, me and him have battled. I have a 25-year-old daughter. Me and her have done less battling because she learned. She watched her brother and was like, I ain't doing that. But he always got that thing in his head that he needed to be with his dad to learn to be a man. And I had to process that. So talking to my partner, I was like asking questions. So it's what he had to say, what I know as a single mom, the meat and potatoes that my son has, that foundation that he was given being raised by a single mom, and then figuring out what it meant. So I came full circle figuring out, and I finally posted it for the 20 what is it, April's 30 poems.
It is National Poetry Month. We should have said that, right? So there's no wonder that I have a poet and a mental health clinician because it is National Poetry Month. And there is a 30 for 30. So every day you're supposed to write a piece in celebration of National Poetry Month. So I think, what are we at now? Day 6? Day 6. So at this point, you should have had about 6 poems written. I think I wrote 2. So I got to catch up. I got to catch up.
But I wrote like 7 or 8 towards the end of March. So it's like, dang, really?
Yeah, so we can't carry him over? I think we can.
Yeah, that's
nobody knows. Don't tell nobody. Like, that's our little secret. So I said this last week, about 70% of U.S. adults have experienced at least one traumatic event in their lifetime. And that's to say, not everybody will, a mental health diagnosis won't necessarily manifest from having a traumatic event. I think that's really important. We throw around trauma so much, but not everybody who goes through something is permanently scarred or needs to go to therapy for it. A lot of people have great coping strategies where they can understand that accidents happen. They can understand that, life isn't perfect. They can understand that bad things or anything can happen to anyone. And so they don't really hold on to it with the resentment and the pain and the hurt that sort of allows them to get stuck and live in a place of fear. So I had come across, I think she's called the capacity therapist. And she was talking about this. She was talking about that therapy has kind of diluted people from being resilient. And us being in this place of now everything is trauma. Everybody's a narcissist. Everybody's bipolar. Anytime someone tells you no, it's a problem. Like, we can't take feedback. We're just so emotionally fragile, is what she was saying. And I was like, we got to have like both spaces for that, because I think some people have had to be so strong all the time that they haven't allowed themselves the ability to be emotionally fragile. And then that's probably some people that are just using this in a counterproductive way to probably be manipulative, where you can't say anything to them without them saying, okay, now you're triggering me, leave me alone. And they're running and hiding. So you never get a chance to have any difficult conversation with them because they're always saying that it's too difficult for them to process, and so they avoid it. What do you think about that?
Oh, I believe what you said. There's 2 sides to it. So work in crisis, I warn people, I'm a mother first and foremost. So when I walk in there, it's like the mom hat comes on, because you'll have these kids that manipulate because they got a mental health diagnosis and the family wants to buy into it. And it comes to a point where it's like, stop. If you have anxiety and you can't go to school, then how can you have anxiety and go work a job in a diner? So it's like, and then you have depression and everybody has it. And there's days where it's like, yes, you can't function, you can't move, but there's times where you just got to get up and get things done. So it's a twofold. And that's one of the things where you are not your diagnosis.
Thank you.
That is one of the biggest things.
Diagnosis.
You are not your diagnoses.
No. And it's about learning coping strategies, which again is why we're talking about expressive art therapy, because things like arts in general in school, I think they really should stop cutting those programs, right?
Yes.
You need dance, you need art, you need music, you need balance, right? Like, at the end of the day, the thought that kids are supposed to sit in school for 8 hours and sit behind a desk and have no movement and no other outlets other than just learning and consuming content and data is none of us want to do that, right? Mm-hmm. We would want to get up, move around, or wander the building and do different things, especially if it's content that you find difficult or you don't like. So I think having a place to go is really important, which is one of the reasons why I created Pro Therapy. I'm like, well, let me create something that's designed to encourage people to write whatever is on their mind and then get up and share it, which I don't know if you know this. Public speaking is like the number one anxiety provoking thing for most Americans, right? It's number one reason most people have anxiety is getting up and talking in front of people. Another one is just walking up to strangers or going out by yourself and not being in a group. So I wanted to create an event that you could come solo and you could still meet some really cool people. You could write poetry and get up there and be accepted. You literally don't have to do anything except say you want to do poetry to be able to be a part of poet therapy. And I wanted it to be easy, right? Where everybody could get up and speak no matter what. And that has really helped a lot of people that I didn't even know were struggling with their mental health, and being able to do that was so healing, was just to get up and tell their story and share their emotions and to be embraced. So I'm glad that we are doing this work. You know, we're special people to deal with emotions on a consistent basis. So tell me, how do you manage all of that? Because we're constantly taking things in. What do you do to take care of yourself, to decompress? I know you write, but what else do you do?
I'm dating. I'm dating.
She said that with a whole smile on her face.
Did.
She said, I'm dating. Okay. So why is that significant in terms of your process and your self-care of dating?
Because I've given so much of myself to family, friends, and I have somebody that wants to give to me.
Ooh. So you in your feminine energy bag.
Just a little bit.
You're receiving.
I am.
I like that for you. I love it. Actually, I love that for you. I love that for you, because I think that part of unresolved trauma often means connection, right? And finding that partner that meets you where you are and understands your triggers, speaks your love language, creates an opportunity for you to feel safe. Like, that is so important when you are moving through this process. But how did you not stay stuck and stay afraid to move on being a survivor? Because that's not an easy task, to be able to open up to love again.
It's not. So I'm going to transition back to what we talked about with my books and my writing. So one of my things is this 4-part series that I was doing. Hypervigilancy is the first book. I've been working on compartmentalizing. So that's what I did a lot to work through my traumas, is compartmentalizing. And that is, to make it the most simple, is for those neat freaks, when you know you got to put stuff away in the dresser and everything has its space. Compartmentalizing your mental is, when you're working, you leave the family stuff with the family stuff. When you're with family, you try to leave work and friends. So it's like just being with who you needed to be in that moment. And then I was always reevaluating myself. My third book is I Found Love in 7 Deadly Men. Their sin is my sin. So they're all identified by the sin. So it's me looking at the relationships, what I got from it, what I learned about myself, and then finding a man in my life that shows me more of what I'm worth. So even though I'm willing to accept certain things, it doesn't mean I should have had to.
Right. Right. So can you, elaborate on that in terms of the 7 men and 7 deadly sins? Can you tell us more about what that means?
So there's a relationship that I was in that was just about lust, and how lust developed into seeing the other side of me, the love side, and that lust for a woman does not have to be any different from a man. So it's owning my sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's that pride. I am very prideful woman. So sometimes it's that challenge of, you're telling me something and it's triggering me in this relationship. And is it my pride, or is it just the everyday? And sometimes it's that pride. So I did have an incident with one of my partners, and it was he told me to go home because he was going to be late getting to his house. But just to tell me to go home, to me, was a disrespect. You didn't come at me with options. Did I want to come get the keys from him? Did I want to meet him at a later time? So it was very triggering for me. And I got into that adult temper tantrum, or that girl mode. Went, got keys, go get my stuff, and make you come get the keys from my house. And the reality, that was my pride. Because once I got the keys and went to his house, I could have just stayed there and let him in when he got in. I didn't have to do all that extraness.
Mm-hmm.
But my pride got in the way.
Wow. Shout out to Vic Breedy, because she also has discussed and shared that her books, her novels, were connected to past trauma. And the characters represented different emotions that she was going through when she wrote her book. So one of the things I had that I'm aware of, and you probably are too, is that individuals with unresolved trauma are 2 to 3 times more likely to develop anxiety, depression, or PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. When we think about writing and we think about using poetry, can you talk about some of your success stories where you've seen your clients develop a coping strategy and be able to process this unresolved trauma? How have you seen that manifest?
So with a couple of my clients, so I have this poem Tornado that I created. And it's definitely a different style of writing for me. It's not story writing, but it allows them to do a trauma board. So I share the poem with them and they get the option, trauma board or the journaling. And with the poem, you have specific guidelines of reading the poem through. It's a guide for you completing one task each week so you're not overthinking, not working for more than an hour, not doing it before bed because really you're looking at your past fears and struggles. So I don't want you just having nightmares about it. And then based on the client, it's how they create their trauma board. So you got to put a tornado on there. How big is that tornado right now to you as you're going through it? And then using colors in schools and how do you place your fears? Where does self-harm go? So I have one client that's working on it now, one that completed it, and it's to their level. So even though it's a therapeutic assignment I give them, it's how much they're able to do and what they get out of it. So as they do each week, we touch base. What did you learn? What did you feel from this? And how we tie it in. I have another client that wanted to do the journaling. So for the journaling, we did, here's all your traumas. Let's put them in order. What do you want to address first? And I would give them a movie to watch. And there is this movie that is on Disney. It is called Night Bitch. And it talks about parenting, being a mom, making that choice to stay at home, what it looks like when you have friends that don't have kids, how the man plays the role in it. And to come back, here's the questions. And she comes back excited, like it was the best movie ever. Doing the trauma board, it's like, dang, it makes me look at things that I didn't even think of. So it's really powerful. Really powerful.
So, there's another school of thought often that, going back, looking in the past, looking at your past traumas is not effective, right? You don't want to re-traumatize people, and there's always different schools of thought, right? I feel like to a certain extent, if it's already living in your mind, ruminating, or you're constantly triggered by it, then it's already with us regardless. So the idea of like, we don't want to address it, it's already like in the forefront of your cerebral cortex versus someone who's repressed it and you're trying to bring it forth. Mm-hmm. But I find that most people don't realize that how they're showing up in the world, what bothers them is usually connected to something, right? There's, and you often have either repressed it or you're in some level of a defense mechanism, denial, projection, where you're not really using a mirror and sort of identifying that this has a past and it has a connection to my current behavior. So keeping that in mind, because your work is deeply rooted in trauma-informed care. Looking back, how has your past, whether personal experiences or generational influences, helped or hindered the woman that you are becoming or the woman that we see today?
So I'm going to share a poem first before I completely answer that. I
just love that. Don't y'all love that? Once again, Toni Rose, you're listening to Conversations with Coach La right now on the Urban Heat, 98.1 FM, live and direct from Hyde Park, Massachusetts. And we are the only Black-owned radio station in Boston that's on the iHeartRadio platform. Introducing Toni Rose.
So this is called I Understand. Actions. It's said that actions speak louder than words. My words often fall on deaf ears. I speak the truth, the things people don't want to hear. The hardest thing is facing the truth, knowing the truth, understanding the truth. When others can't hear you, your only option is to show them through action. Actions fall to blindness, seeing what one wants to see, feeling interpreted by one's fear. It's said that actions speak louder than words. Actions have consequences that you have to be willing to face. Your actions may backfire, leaving you in one place you didn't want to be. They say, ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies. It's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. Can you handle the words, the actions of life, as it travels in a path once traveled before? I asked my lost 16-year-old client, do actions speak louder than words? Do the words cut so deep below the belt that you can't stand to hear them? Do your thoughts hurt so bad that you're just holding on by a string? I get it. I understand. I know you've heard these words before. Isolated in darkness, dismissed with the aversion of understanding, unheard. How do I know my value? My poetry, the raw truth. I want you to feel comfortable in the uncomfortable. I teach about emotions. My heart aches literally. I hear your emotional pain. I see the physical pain. I still live with the social pain. Loneliness is real. Judgment is harsh. Disappointment is the stepping stones of self-destruction. I feel what you feel in the adult world. My feelings no different than yours. My ability to process years of experience, the good, the bad, the ugly. How do you turn it around? How do you feel safe? How do you take the next step? How do you trust when you feel so violated? When best interests are not your interests? Understand emotions are situational. One thing does not always have to impact everything. All or nothing kind of self-defense. How do you pick up the pieces, move forward after taking a few steps back? How do you let yourself off the hook? You were never meant to do this alone. Hi, my name is Toni. I'm here to support you. What that looks like depends on you. No, we will not always agree. Yes, I will make those hard choices. Sadly, you will despise and hate my actions. However, I will continue to stand by my truth. Survivor's instinct. What say you? Temporarily satisfied with this open line of communication until reality kicked in, lost sobriety, sexual exploitation, solidified her desires for love and affection. Pushed the people away who brought her into their home, wanting the best for her is killing them slowly. Last straw, DCF has stepped in. Lost soul refuses to reconnect. Her actions speak louder than her words.
Toni Rose. Trying to tell you, man, they say that studies, expressive art therapy can reduce PTSD symptoms by at least 40% for trauma survivors. I think we have to do things in tandem. I think you meet people where they are. I think expressive art therapy, poetry meets people where they are. It allows them to decide when they're ready to open up and to start to share and to share at their own pace. So I love poetry. I love that you have always challenged the room with your words to think beyond the surface and to think about these things in a different way. So that brings me to one of my favorite parts of the show, which is our bet on self moments. The hour goes by so fast and we cover so much ground, but these are these defining moments and decisions where we decide, if not now, then when? If not me, then who? Right? And it's those uncomfortable moments when we decide to heal, to change despite our circumstances, what we've gone through, what people have said about us, what our family said about us, but we start to own our own narratives. Thinking about your journey thus far, what would you say is a pivotal bet on self moment, or maybe even one that's to come that you are currently in? I had Liz Miranda on here and she said she was in her bet on self season, which I was like, that's dope, right? Like, forget a moment. I'm in my bet on self season. So you can even tell me about your bet on self season.
And that it would have to be a season. It's the year. 2025 is actually my year.
Yeah.
So my first is that I hired a marketing sensation, Alicia Pina of Inner Wingspan. Since I don't do well with promoting myself, but I did great with promoting this. I really did.
I was proud of you.
And that's because I feel like she's in my ear because I hired her. This is what I need her to help me with.
Yep.
because I'm very humble in who I am with what I do. So it's like hearing everybody else say this, like, okay, Toni, finally, you got to get out there. And I want to maximize my time with the least amount of efforts. And I feel like if I can get out there, get groups together, whether it is insurance based or just art based, would be amazing for me, for my financial need, well-being, for my healing. So that's one of my biggest, is that having that marketing person to help me.
Yes, I remember that moment. So shout out to Alicia. Shout out to Contessa Brown. We got a couple people that's been on the live. Shout out to my homegirl, UMass sister, Dr. Kimberly Williams. Thank you for tuning in, and everybody on iHeartRadio, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I know Instagram's over there too, but I got a lot going on, y'all. Y'all know I be trying to make sure that there's no stone unturned. I'm also on LinkedIn too. So shout out to everyone that's tuned in and listening. Appreciate y'all's support and sitting on the virtual couch with me and Miss Toni. So talk to me about that though too, being able to identify your strengths and your I don't even want to say weaknesses, but opportunities for growth, right? In terms of being able to say, you know what, I got all this good stuff. Because I think when we met and we sat down, folks kept saying, you need to meet Coach, you need to talk to Coach.
Yep.
You need to meet Toni. You guys got so much in common. Y'all need to sit down and talk. And it was like, I don't know, but I felt like we was low key, like just observing each other from afar. Like, I saw you, you saw me. It was always good vibes. And we gonna get together, sis. We're gonna make it happen. But we still watching each other. I'm watching you, you watching me. And we finally got a chance to sit down after my performance at Lizard Lounge. And you were like, I got a chance to see you, Coach, meaning me, in a different light by me actually sharing my poetry. Because usually I'm curating the events and I'm behind the scenes and I'm moving and I'm shaking. And a lot of people don't get a chance to hear me do my poetry. So it was like, yes, we got all of this energy in common. And that was that pivotal moment. And I've seen a shift in you from that breakfast. Like you definitely, I would say 2025 is your Bet on Self season, because you've been coming out. You got a performance that's coming up right here. Actually, it won't be here this time. It's going to be at Hibernia Hall, but it's with VCR, my radio brother, my poetic brother, Verbalizations. That's coming up Tuesday.
Yes.
So people want to see Toni live. You can check her out at Verbalizations with VCR. That's coming up actually this week on Tuesday. But you are outside. Like I've seen you doing a lot more performances. You're on more flyers. You agreed to come on my show. So I'm like, yes, I love this for you and for me, that I got an opportunity to sit down and get to know you when we went to breakfast, and also now tonight on the show.
I feel the same way. That was the same messages that I kept getting, is you need to link up with Coach La. And my attitude at first was like, okay, why do I want to piggyback on somebody else's coattail? I know what I want to do and everything. And I don't know who this person is that you keep telling me that I need to link up with. And like you said, especially when you came to Lizard, is like, oh, she is, we do similar poetry styles, stories. I write about anything and everything. And I know some of the listeners like, dang it, she ain't doing none of them nasty pieces, because I'm not doing nasty on the radio. You're going to have to come out and catch me in May out at Afroverb in Rhode Island, because that's when I'll do the Talk Dirty, or come to Lizard Lounge for the semifinals.
Wait, listen, she did that piece because she also performed at Poe Therapy at the Urban Escape on the Cape. And yeah, the room was definitely heated up. Folks was like, okay, all right. Excuse me.
I'm trying to make the babies. I'm making the babies out there.
I was definitely like, oh, Miss Toni.
Yes.
What are you doing to us, Miss Toni?
I want people to be comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Yes.
And that's what it comes down to. People don't want to communicate these days because they're so afraid of hurting somebody's feelings. But sometimes not saying anything hurts their feelings.
Yes, I think, there's a great book about when being nice is really the problem. Maybe you're being too nice, right? Not speaking up is the problem. Being a passive aggressive, being a people pleaser is the problem. Sometimes you need to be uncomfortable and tell people no, and people got to learn how to take a no and give a no. So I definitely agree with all of that. We are like at the last 6 minutes of this show, right? And I'm trying to do better with my time, y'all, because y'all know Coach can talk. Um, so we talked a little bit about what's next for you, but thinking about what you want people who are considering art therapy, um, on the fence, been writing, but afraid to go do an open mic because they think they're not good enough. What is some advice you have for an aspiring poet, spoken word artist, or just someone who's on their journey of self discovery?
If you have a message that you want to share, just get up and share it. I ended up becoming a slam poet because the open mic was too late after a 12-hour work shift. And it was just about my message, and it's still about my message. I still get scared when I get up there thinking, don't nobody want to hear what I have to say? And then you finish, and it's like, oh my God, I can relate so much. I also had to learn to stop running away. I would be that person, okay, it's done, it's over, I'm out the door, and realize people are looking for me. So slowing down is one of the big things in believing in yourself. If you wrote it for a reason, and somebody out there needs to hear it. My poetry has saved lives. I've heard it, I own it, and I keep on doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's sometimes being able to step out of your comfort zone and put yourself out there is the work. Just
Mm-hmm.
doing that in itself, once you say, "Oh my God, I really did that," it's so exhilarating. It's so powerful. Another thing, nobody knows what you're gonna say. Oftentimes, you just got to get up there and just talk through it. People don't know if you messed up or didn't mess up. I remember when I was doing dance and cheerleading, my coach would be like, just keep going. They don't know whether or not that was part of the dance routine. Just keep going, do whatever you got to do until you catch up and remember what you were supposed to do. So sometimes the idea of faking it till you make it, I'm not discouraging that or promoting it, but I do think that sometimes what you have to do is envision who you want to be
Mm-hmm.
and start to step into that and put it on like a jacket and know that you can put the jacket on, take the jacket off, but to continue to keep on trying, and keep on moving forward and give yourself the space to become the best version of yourself, whatever that may be, knowing that you define it. So any other thoughts, any other 2 cents before I get into the coach's corner and wrap this bad boy up?
Poetry can save your life. Music, art, therapy, it can save your life. You just have to be willing to communicate it.
Yeah, don't be afraid to write, people, too. Just pull out the notebook and let it rip. Sometimes you might just scribble and write the same thing over and over
Mm-hmm.
again. I think, what I love creative and free writing for that reason. So you guys know Coach's Corner, which I started for this season, is a moment where we reflect, we gather key takeaways and leave you with something to carry you forward on your journey. Tonight, Toni reminded us that pain is not the end of the story. It's a chapter. It is not the conclusion. Healing is a process, and expressing ourselves through art can be a powerful way to reclaim our narratives. Your trauma does not define you. Your response to it does. Whether through poetry, painting, movement, or music, find a way to release, to express, and to bet on yourself. That is ideally what we really want to encourage people to do, is to believe, to feel empowered, and to transform their situations by transforming their thoughts. And you do that with who you surround yourself with, what you consume and listen to, and your daily actions. Next week there'll be another conversation with Coach La. I got Chanel Swain coming on, who is all about manifestation and affirmation. So you don't want to miss that conversation. So make sure you're right back here for another episode of Conversations with Coach La, 10 p.m. right here on the Urban Heat. Thank you, Miss Toni Rose.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you coming on here and sitting on a virtual couch. I'll see you on Tuesday at Verbalizations. Make sure you guys follow her on Instagram at Toni Blue Rose or on Facebook. Get with her if you need a therapist. You know, we out here in these streets doing this work. Again, as always, make sure you bet on yourself, and I'll see y'all next week. Good night.
Good night.
Call or text 857-400-9014. That's 857-400-9014. Or email contact@personifiedmedia.com. That's contact@PERSONIFYD media.com. I am Ray Royale. Now pop your collar and lean into greatness.
I'm already